Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Dave McConnell, and I'm the Executive Director of Professional Learning at Foundations, Inc. We want to welcome you all back for another webinar in our Beyond the Conference webinar series. Today, our session is going to be facilitated by Jana List, who's an education specialist at Foundations, Inc. So happy to have her on. And we're going to get started shortly. But before we do, I want to give you a little bit of background information on Foundations, and we'll go ahead and jump in. So for those of you who might not be familiar, we're a national educational nonprofit located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. And our mission is to improve the quality of education by building the skills of educators. We work across the school day with after-school programs, school districts, and states to create a brighter future for every child every day. If you're interested in learning more about Foundations, you can follow us on social media. I'll drop that info into the chat in a minute or two. You may already know us from our signature professional learning experience, the Beyond School Hours Conference, which is held each year in February. In 2024, if you haven't heard, we're going to be in New Orleans from February 14th to the 17th. And we'd love to have everybody on board and in New Orleans with us. If you're interested in coming, because the conference starts the day after Mardi Gras, though, we highly recommend that you book your hotel and your flight soon if you haven't yet. Now, I'll go ahead and ask Jana to introduce herself in just a second. Just so you know, though, before we get started, this webinar is going to be archived on our website and on YouTube, so you'll be able to access it later in case you want to go ahead and review all the great content that we're sharing today. But now I'll go ahead and pass it over to Jana to introduce herself.
Great. Hi, Dave, and hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you with us to be talking about one of our beloved STEM graffiti walls. And this is one of the books that has been put out by our organization to support programs and to offer really fun hands-on activities for students to engage them in thinking about STEM. So because STEM is the topic of the day, I'd love for us to start off with a STEM activity called Lions, Tigers, and Bears. Oh my. And so we're going to participate in one of the graffiti walls that you can put out for your students. Now with this graffiti wall, you're going to use your annotation tools. If you're not familiar, the annotation tools should be along the top of your screen. And you should be able to share or type in or write in what you know about lions, tigers, and bears. So what is their diet? What do they eat? What is their lifestyle in terms of time of day? Are they nocturnal, so they're active at night? Are they diurnal, which means active during the daytime? Are they crepuscular, which is active in the morning and in the evening, so dawn and dusk? What is their habitat? Do they live on land? Do they live in water? Do they live in like kind of a combination? And what continent generally do they live on? So whether it's North America, Africa, or Asia. And while you all are participating, I also want to let you know that Dave is sharing some information about our contact, so you can visit both our organization's website and the website for conference information. It is still time for early registration, so early bird registration. Dave has also shared all of our social media handles, so you can follow us on social media as well. So if you have not followed us on social media, please do. We're very active, especially on LinkedIn and Instagram. So we'd love to have you with us on those platforms. And it looks like we are someone says that bears eat trash from their house. So is someone here from Alaska or maybe the Pacific Northwest? We'd love to hear So bears are one of those species that have adapted to living in proximity to humans. So it looks like we are getting filled in. So let's just take another minute. All right, so we have filled in some information, and we have a couple of question marks as well, which is exciting. And so let's fill in. So lions, as we all agreed, are carnivores. Their lifestyle is actually nocturnal, so they are primarily active at night. They hunt at night typically. And if you think about it, most of them live in Africa with some isolated populations in India as well. So they live in very hot parts of the world. So it makes sense for them to be active at night, and their habitat is primarily the land. So they primarily are either in the savanna, sort of in very hot, dry areas. For tigers, again, they are carnivores. They are also nocturnal animals. And again, they live primarily on the land. A lot of tigers live in the jungle as well. And they live primarily in Asia and parts of Africa as well, but primarily in Asia. And finally, bears. So there's a couple of different species of, there's black bears and brown bears. We heard in the chat box that there's someone who has a bear problem in their area. So Kaylee, it sounds like living in parts of California has a bear problem. I'm sorry. So it is possible that we've had those encounters with bears because they are often omnivores. So even though they mostly eat meat, so fish, oftentimes they will kind of eat anything they come across. Because there's several species of them. So like black bears are primarily nocturnal. Some of them are diurnal, that means active during the daytime. That's brown bears, and many of them are crepuscular, which means they're active early morning or in the evening. So dawn and dusk. They often live in that combo environment. So a lot of bears live on land, but they spend a lot of time in the water, especially for doing a lot of fishing. And they live in North America. So thank you everyone for participating in our little activity. And Dave in the chat box will share the full version of this graffiti wall that you can all feel free to download. We just selected a couple of columns from the tool, but you can download the tool and use the whole thing with your students. The whole point of the graffiti walls is to have them sort of blown up and large on your walls, but you can use it as a handout as well. So Dave did just share that in the chat box. So thank you everyone for participating in this activity. Now we are ready to get started with our presentation today. So like Dave mentioned, we're here from Foundations, and we're going to be talking about one of our graffiti walls. As Dave mentioned, the mission of Foundations is we are dedicated to improving the quality of education for our nation's children by strengthening the skills of educators. So to do that today, we are going to be talking about how do we integrate STEM in ways that are really engaging and fun for our kids and our families. My name is Yana List, and I have been with Foundations for 4 years now, and I come from a background as a school day after school summer educator, and I come from a background in STEM as a biology and chemistry teacher, and really my greatest passion is thinking about ways that we can make STEM exciting and accessible to our students and to our staff, especially for any of our staff who don't come from a background in science. So we're going to be talking about some cool and easy tools from our STEM graffiti wall that you can use that don't require a lot of background content knowledge. We will obviously be using Zoom, so if you haven't familiarized yourself with Zoom tools, we will be mostly using the annotate tool, which should either be along the top or the bottom of your screen, depending on what kind, if you're a mobile or if you are on a personal computer. We will also use the reactions and the chat box, which many of you have already found your way to. Of course, we're all probably old hats at Zoom, but just to mention. So let's really dive into our objectives for today. And we're going to be talking about how to set up, use, learn from, and expand on the STEM graffiti walls. We're going to talk about ways to use our STEM graffiti walls to build 21st century skills in students. And we're going to talk about methods to capture students' knowledge, skills, abilities, and in the STEM graffiti wall. So how can we use these tools to learn about what our students know? So we just participated in one of our activities in that STEM graffiti wall. So I'd love to hear from you in the chat box what kind of learning you did in this activity, what the point was. Why did we just do this activity? So I'd love to hear from you thinking about what kind of thinking did you do? What did that encourage you to do in the graffiti wall that we shared on the screen? Oh, so Crystal shared that this was a good way to check in on prior knowledge. We also had to think about definitions of words. Some of you might not have been familiar with, it sounded like might not have been familiar with what nocturnal, diurnal, and crepuscular meant. It was a good way to focus, got everybody on the same page, excited to participate. We could do a little comparing and contrasting of the different animals. You might have noticed that all 3 animals we shared were mammals. Now in the tool, if you choose to download it, there are spaces to add other species, so you don't just have to stick with lions, tigers, and bears, oh my. So you can add other species, you can do comparing and contrasting between mammals and reptiles and whatever other kinds of species you want to focus and highlight in your learning session. So thank you everyone for sharing some of those ideas of the learning that happened in that graffiti wall. Today, we want to start by talking about the why of graffiti walls and really what we can get from graffiti walls, how they're a little bit different from other learning experiences. Now, the way graffiti walls work, if none of you have ever seen our books at any conferences, is that we provide sort of handout-sized versions of the graffiti walls. But you can take that graffiti wall and blow it up or just draw it out on a big piece of chart paper or a whiteboard, things like that. So you can really get your students out of their seats and interacting. So writing on the walls, that's why they're called the graffiti walls. So it's really about getting students active. And the way we do that is by presenting them with challenging, exciting discussions and topics that really get them thinking activate prior knowledge, like many of you shared. And graffiti walls are great because they are something that can be part of a larger unit plan. You can use it as an opening activity, as we did during this session. You might have noticed we spent about 3 to 5 minutes on it. So it was a nice starter activity. You can use them as a closing session. You can use them to introduce a new topic. The great thing about the graffiti walls is that these are all tools that you can do really quickly and easily that can be part of a larger learning experience, or it can be a shorter activity. And so we'll talk about ways to both sort of use these out as one-offs and also how to expand on the graffiti walls if that's something you'd like. And the wonderful thing about the graffiti walls is that they are really designed to serve a wide range of ages. So this is an activity that you can do with second graders based on maybe some stories you've read of different kinds of animals. Or you can do it with high school students as they're starting a research project studying different kinds of animals and their characteristics. And in the graffiti wall books, we have a lot of ideas and details on how you can scale these activities up to both work with different age students and also to make them even more engaging and deeper learning opportunities. So there's great ways to build on and expand on the graffiti walls. That was just a small activity, but you can very easily turn it into a big research project, as I mentioned. Or it can wrap up if you were reading a story. For example, if you were reading Giraffes Can't Dance, which is one of my favorite childhood books, and using it to reflect on the different animals that you saw in that story, just as an example. So there's a lot of ways that we can use these graffiti walls to make them an engaging part of your learning. And the great thing about the STEM graffiti wall is that is a tool that we can use to really focus on science, which can often be a challenge area for some of our staff because they might not have a background in science. So that's where the STEM graffiti walls can really step in and fill in any content gaps that your staff may have. So that was an example of a science graffiti wall within our STEM graffiti wall book. Let's look at another one. And this comes from Magic 34. And Magic 34 is one of the coolest things you'll ever see. And basically what Magic 34 is that in this table, this 4x4 table, every row and every column adds up to 34. So if you do 1 plus 2 plus 15 plus 16, that'll give you 34. If you do 13 plus 14 plus 3 plus 4, same thing. And on. So across every row and down every column, the totals are 34. And this is a really challenging math activity. And the reason that this can be, we've given you a filled in one, we'll show you one that's not filled in as well. The kinds of math concepts that are practiced in this activity is it requires a lot of pattern recognition. Of course, practicing addition. Are you actually getting 34 in each row and column? So it's a great way to engage students. It's similar if you've ever tried Sudoku. It's another variation on that same idea of teaching kids and making kids practice that pattern recognition. And it's not just rows and columns, but if you look at the diagonals, you'll also see that the diagonals add up to 34 as well. So that's a really fun activity that I love. So I've given you a filled in one as an example, but we do have a blank one that I would love for you all to take some time to try to fill in. Again, if you are really sure, then you can really start to fill it in on our screen using the annotate button. I will suggest that you want to start with areas that you're most sure of. So which columns and rows are the most filled in? So let's take a couple of minutes to try to fill this in. how can you make each row and each column add up to 34? Oh, it looks like Katrina has said that Katrina's right, it's 10, because 10 plus 11 is 21, plus 8, 29, plus 5 is 34. So thank you, Katrina. Now, based on Katrina's submission, see there's some, it's a little hard to read yes, thank you, Crystal. It's 10 plus 13 plus 7 plus 4. Awesome. Filling in that second column is a 1. Yes, 1 plus 9 plus 16 plus 8. First column, second row, yes, is 15. First column, first row, that very first box exactly is a 12. 15 plus 9 plus 6 plus 4. 12, first column down is 12 plus 15 plus 2 plus 5. Excellent. So Signy asked, when doing this activity, do we want the numbers to repeat, or is it more of a challenge for them to try to pick different numbers? So this is a table that only has one correct answer, and whether they repeat or not doesn't matter. It's about getting it to add up to 34 along every column and every row. And I have shared with you all one that already had a good bit of it filled in. In our book, we have a bunch of these, some that are more or less filled in, along with the correct answers, don't worry. And these are another great brain teaser to use with your students to get them thinking about math that's challenging in a way that they may not have encountered before. And you can scale it up and scale it down. Provide a lot more numbers for your younger students, minimize the numbers for your older students. And we do provide tables with sort of the minimal number of answers included. So the number of numbers that they need to be able to answer it, but a lot fewer than we had in this table. And you can, again, vary that based on your student's age range and how you want to use this. If you're doing pattern recognition, if you're practicing with older students, you want to provide fewer numbers. If you're practicing addition with younger students, you might want to provide more. You're more focused on them being able to do that addition with multiple numbers. So thank you everyone for participating in that activity. It's one of my favorite ones. And it's a really good brain teaser. Again, it's fun for every age group. It's fun for adults. So hopefully you all had a good time with that. And as we're thinking about using this, I'd love to hear from you if this is an activity you might want to use with your students. What context are you thinking about that Magic 34? Is there any environment or any context where you would love to use that activity? We'd love to hear from you in the chat box. But in general, what STEM GraffitiWall activities provide are opportunities for engagement and opportunities to get your students really excited about STEM, while also providing learning opportunities. You can use this to reinforce learning that they've already done, and you can use it as an opportunity to introduce a new concept. if you're doing pattern recognition with students. Oh, Patricia shared a great idea. Using this as a staff meeting icebreaker is also a good time. You all might have noticed that you worked together to solve it. We had it on the screen. You can also put it up on a board or like a piece of chart paper, depending on how your staff room is set up, where you're holding your staff meeting. Carol Foldy shared that, oh, this is a great idea for the high school robotics program. Yes, critical thinking skills, collaboration. We all work together to solve that. A great way to introduce Sudoku as well. I mean, Sudoku is probably something that we love. I love solving Sudokus personally. I try to do one a day at least. But again, this is a similar concept, that pattern recognition, but it's a little bit different because you're looking at addition versus just having one of every number 1 through 9. So a very similar concept, a slightly different challenge. But again, you're having a lot of opportunities to have kids interact, do some problem solving. Sometimes they, figuring out, okay, I got the wrong answer. How do I go back and fix it and not get frustrated? So thank you everyone for sharing some of those ideas and also engaging in that activity. It's one of my favorites. And again, the different STEM graffiti walls that we have in our STEM graffiti wall book are opportunities for students to engage with different content areas. We started with a science activity that was really about animals and their different kinds of needs, and we just looked at one that was math focused. So we have some that really range across the different disciplines of STEM, depending on what you're looking to prioritize. And like we heard as an example of using this as an icebreaker, either with students or with adults, works with both. What's the really good thing is that these can be used really at any point in the instruction, at the beginning, at the end, in the middle, if you have a multi-day activity, getting kids warmed up for the next phase. So as you can probably tell, I'm a big fan, but there's really many different resources that we have available in that STEM graffiti wall. So with that in mind, we are going to turn our attention to the next great graffiti wall, excuse me, before we get to the next graffiti wall, I want to talk about the ways that these graffiti walls can be used to support individual student needs. We know that when kids come into our classrooms, they all have different needs, different experiences. So if you are thinking about your students who might need some additional support, might need some additional help with these, you can think about ways to diversify this or to differentiate this, excuse me. For some students that might need some more time, you can set a timer and say, you'll just do as much as you can accomplish in 5 minutes, as an example. You can also have students do this in group work if you know some students might struggle with the concepts or with the first activity we showed, lions, tigers, and bears. If they need to do research, some students might need some help to do that. So working in groups can be a great method for that. Starting small. So with the lions and tigers and bears activity, if you downloaded the full version of that activity, you'll see there's space for a lot of different animals and a lot of different columns with a lot more information that needs to be filled in than we showed on the screen today. You can show them the simplified version, so they don't need to look into 6 different pieces of information about an animal. They just need to focus on 3 or 4. So there you can think about simplifying these activities to make them more accessible. You also want to think about the ways that you introduce them to your students. So being really careful to use basic vocabulary. Modeling can be great. So with the Magic 34, you'll notice before I had you fill in the table on the right. On the left hand, I showed you how each row and each column added up to 34. So I modeled the concept embedded in that tool. before I had you go in and try to solve it. So those are ways to make it more supportive to students, more accessible to students that might need some more help. If you're thinking about ways to make these activities more challenging, you can think about ways to increase the time or the number of answers. So in lions and tigers and bears, instead of being 3 mammals, you can really diversify it to include different kinds of living organism, adding some predator and prey animals. So all the animals we had in there were predators. Adding some prey animals, adding animals that aren't mammals. So adding things like fish or birds, other kinds of organisms. You can also increase the kinds of specialized vocabulary. So I did share with you 3 vocabulary words that might have been new to you: nocturnal, diurnal, crepuscular. So introducing new vocabulary is a great way to make it engaging and give students practice with how those vocabulary words are used. What does it mean for an animal to be nocturnal, etc.? You can also think about ways to make it really require more knowledge. So they have to not just limited to what they know in the moment, but they have to do additional research on the animals. Maybe they have to find other examples of the lifestyle, make a diorama. You can build these out in really any way you want. And the great thing, what I love about the graffiti walls, is that they really serve as a starting off point, a jumping off point for even more activity ideas that I have shared. Some are in the graffiti wall book as well. Some great ways to make it even more fun, even more engaging. And especially, we know kids, what kid doesn't love mammals? So it's a great way to get kids excited about thinking about biology in a way that feels engaging and like they're activating that prior knowledge, as all of you shared. So there's a lot of learning going on that's embedded in that activity. So with that in mind, let's look at another activity. This is a fun one. This is a math one. So for this activity, we want to have students using numbers 0 through 9 solve this math problem, but they can't reuse any numbers. So they have to think about a way to make this a true math problem without reusing any numbers. Now I'm going to show you how to solve this one. This is a simple one just to start with. So it's 2 multiplied by some other number equals a 2-digit number that ends in 4. Now, if you're thinking about, well, 2 times what? Because remember, it can only be 0 to 9, right? It can't be anything higher than that. So what is 2 times 0? Doesn't work. 2 times 1, that'll just give me 2. 2 times 2 is 4. That kind of works, but it's not a 2-digit number. 2 times 3, 2 times 4, but I can't use 4 because 4 is already in my problem, so I skip 4. I check. Yes, Sharon's got it. It is 2 times 7 equals 14. So the 2 numbers I will fill in are 7 and 1. So that's an easy one. If you're starting your students off with your younger students, giving students some more support, this could be one that you can use as an introduction. But let's look at a more challenging one. So it's a 3-digit number that starts with 1 multiplied by 39 equals a 4-digit number that starts with 7 and ends with 4. Remember, the numbers 0 to 9 cannot be repeated. So we've already used 5 numbers. We've used 1, 3, 9, 7, and 4. We can't use any of those. and every other number can only be used once. So how are you going to fill in 0, 2, 5, 6, 8 in order to make this equation true? Let's see if any of you can solve this one. It's a little challenging. It does look like someone did share the answer in the chat box. Amy or Kaylee, do either of you want to share your strategy, how you figured out how to solve this problem? What problem solving skills you used?
Yeah, I basically just started guessing. I looked at numbers that weren't used yet. I did, okay, 125 times 39. Oh, that's not enough. Let me start at the higher end and go with what hasn't been used on the higher end. So I went with 185, and then I figured I was close. So then I tried 186 and it worked. So it was really just a trial and error.
Trial and error. There we go. Awesome. Did anyone use a different strategy to solve this?
I did.
Oh, what strategy did you use?
I looked at the 9 and saw that the last number on the answer was 4, and the only number times 9 that ends with a 4 is 6. So that last number had to be 6. And seeing that it was a 4-digit number, 7,000, I knew the next number beside that 6 had to be high. So I tried 8. Just counting down from what was already on the list.
Awesome. So you took a moment to notice that's a really good one. Notice that the first digit gives you that information about what the first two, the ones column, what the multiplication result will be for that. That's a great strategy. Are there any other strategies in the room that everybody used? So thank you both for sharing. And what I loved about this can be a great activity. It is multiplication. With those kind of smaller numbers in the first column where we did 2 by 7 equals 14 is probably accessible to our younger students. This 4-digit number might be a little bit more complicated, but it's a great way to show students that there are multiple approaches. Again, this is an example of pattern recognition. So recognizing that 9 times another number, the only way to get 4 in the ones column would be 9 times 6. And if you're not sure about that, hopefully everybody knows the finger trick of your nines tables, and 9 times 6, that's my 6 right there, gives you a 4 in the ones column. So those are great ways to, again, introduce different problem solving strategies. Sometimes we have to use a random guessing, but even with the guessing strategy, you had a good sense of, okay, well, is this number too small or too large? And that really served to guide your future guesses. So it's not random guessing, it's using the information you have to make informed choices. So showing students there's different ways to solve a problem and having them approach it in different ways. Do some problem solving. Dave will share in the chat box the full version of this handout. So we have shared 2 examples, but there are a bunch more that are available in the handout. So please feel free to download that. And this is, as I hope you all saw, a really fun activity to share with students and get them problem solving. And it's one of those things that we know that some of our students who may have math anxiety, who may have not the greatest experiences with math, especially during his school day, this is a great way to make math really fun. It's not, it doesn't look like a normal worksheet they might encounter in the school day, especially if you post these up on the different walls and students have the opportunity to move around and try different problems. Instead, it's really an opportunity to give kids time to think and time to see math in a new way, in a way that's really fun and kind of like a game. And hopefully we want all our kids to love math, and we want all of our students to love math as well. Now, the other thing I want to note, again, the point of these graffiti walls is that they can serve as a fantastic jumping off point. They're really a great way to get kids out of their seats, to get them thinking, to get them interacting. And they can be a wonderful way to start to make connections to other academic areas. So how do we bring in language arts, math, social studies, and science into these activities? And a great way to bring in those 21st century skills. If you're familiar with them or not, the 21st century skills are critical thinking, creativity, citizenship, communication, and collaboration. So I'd love for all of us to take a moment to reflect of thinking, let's start with that lions, tigers, and bears activity. I'd love to hear from you. How would you connect it to one of these other areas, or more than one of these other areas? I shared an example of a way to make it an activity that really involves language arts. Is you can have students write a report or a play, any kind of a poem, whatever, any kind of writing about one of the animals of their choosing, and to include all those different characteristics. But I'd love to hear from you either on the chat box, or feel free to unmute yourself. How can you add different academic areas to that lions, tigers, and bears oh my activity? Academics, 21st century skills, any and all ideas are super welcome.
I have a suggestion. I'm not sure if it's exactly what you're asking for. But my name is Kim Hicks, and we're with the boardroom chess. And one thing that we could do with that type of graffiti wall that you were using is having in the squares having numbers. But what we do, we put chess pieces that have values, and have kids add additional values to it to come out with the solution that we're looking for.
Yes. Oh, chess is my favorite subject. Okay. So that's a great idea of applying it and using the values of chess pieces. Each chess piece has its own value to do some of that math. Thank you for sharing that idea. And connecting to that lions and tigers and bears, you can have students, if they are learning about specific continents or specific countries, part of that research can be what kinds of animals are native to those countries, and what are their habitats, what are their lifestyles. So use that as a way to connect to what do we know about that area. So, or if students are studying different states, okay, students are studying Montana. What species are native to Montana? That's a great way to do that. Have them build their own habitat. So that brings in both a lot of research and a lot of thinking and understanding the characteristics of different habitats, while also being really artistic and creative, creating your own creature using different aspects from each category. So what would a creature that is crepuscular and a predator and from North America look like? How would they behave? So coming up with your own animal based on those, that's a really fun idea as well. Having them do it in groups is an easy way to make that a collaborative activity as well. Having them do creative research activities as well. And again, you can do all of those same things with the math examples that we shared. So Magic 34 is often a really great one to do to get kids solving it. First they solve it and then they have to check each other's work. So learning how to give feedback, learning how to check work, that's something that they should do of their own work, but a lot of kids don't. So making that a good practice of, does each column, does each row, does each diagonal actually equal 34? And that's a great way. And how do you communicate to a peer if their answer isn't correct? So practicing all of those skills can be a really accessible point. And again, it feels like a game because it is a game, honestly, and get kids thinking about math in a slightly different way. And finally, so the last activity we did where with Math Madness, where you couldn't repeat those numbers, I'd love to hear if anyone has to share any other ways to connect it across the curriculum. Please do share that either in the chat box or feel free to unmute yourself and share any ideas. I think one great one that could be really challenging and really fun for kids is to have them create their own, especially if you download that tool. And there's, I believe, 6 or 8 of those math problems on that sheet. So students solve all of those, and then they have to build their own. And that's a really challenging math task that requires some creativity and a whole lot of critical thinking. But if anyone has any other ideas to share in the chat box, we'd love to hear them. And so we can all take each other's ideas and really bring exciting learning opportunities to our kids. All right. Sounds like we don't have any ideas coming out. The other thing to do is, oh.
No, how you doing? If you want to do something like have the kids split up into 3 groups, give one the jungle, give one the city, give one the forest, and have them write a list of animals down and then compare which animals, how many animals in all 3, or something like that. That might be something that the kids would enjoy doing, and it would get a conversation going.
Yes. Oh, yeah, definitely. Why are some animals nocturnal? So, for example, a lot of animals that live in the African savanna are nocturnal. Why? Because it's very hot during the daytime. As an example, why are some animals, in fact, a lot of animals are either active at night or active, they're crepuscular, active at sort of the early morning and the evening. Thinking about what are those animals' characteristics. You can really have it connect to pets for your students. So if any of your students have cats, thinking about when are your cats most active. That can be a great way to invite students to study animals in their own homes. So if you have a pet, when are they most active? Cats are an example of a crepuscular species. We often don't see them when they're most active because it's sort of dawn. And many people who have a cat have been woken up at like 5 a.m. with the cat playing because that's when they're active. So that's a great way to take these and really connect it to the family. Again, we want to give our students really positive learning experiences during our program time, and we can expand that to what's going on at home. And expand the challenge, expand the Math Madness worksheet of have students take it home. Can you work with someone at home to try to solve one of these or all of them, whatever you prefer, to really expand that learning and make it accessible to everyone. So these are great tools to make that connection. And again, it is a learning opportunity. There's a lot of learning embedded in these activities, but it doesn't feel like homework. It feels like a fun challenge. You can also think about sharing student work. So if, for example, you decide to build dioramas based on that lions, tigers, and bears activity, you can then invite families to see different students' dioramas, and students give presentations about the animals or the habitat they selected and everything they learned about it, because they did a lot of learning and a lot of work. Again, especially for our programs that also have strong connections with the school day, these activities can be a great way to connect with school day staff, to show them, okay, so these are the activities we're doing. How can we expand this? Expansion is a great opportunity to build on school day skills. So we've done these really fun STEM activities. What are you working on in math and science right now? How can I deepen the learning and make it really closely connected with what's going on in the school day? So again, we want to build those relationships because those will, in the end, have really positive outcomes for our students. If there's alignment between the school day and the out of school time environment, we can make sure that we're reinforcing the learning that is already happening in the school day. But we also know that we want out of school time to look different. We don't want kids, sitting in their seats, feeling like this is just an extension of the school day. So we are also giving kids an opportunity to do learning, but in a way that looks really different than sitting at a desk kind of being lectured at. So with all of those opportunities, we'd like to think about all of these activities that we've looked at today, and how they connect to the different 21st century and the different academic skills that we've highlighted today. If any of you have any expansion ideas to share, we would love to hear from you. Love to hear some ideas. And the other thing I want to point out that in these STEM graffiti wall books, you will see that there is a page called Know It When You See It. And in this, we really give you ways to evaluate the learning that happens with using the graffiti wall. So we mentioned at the beginning that one of the goals for today is how can we assess the strength of these activities. So the Know It When You See It checklist is an opportunity to make sure, are we using this in a way that is engaging? Are we facilitating it effectively? Are we thinking about ways to expand the learning and making it a really meaningful opportunity for all the students engaged? As we're wrapping up for today, what I love to hear from all of you, I'm hoping that you're all energized thinking about the graffiti walls that we shared, as well as the many others that are found in the graffiti wall books. We'd love to hear from you in the chat. Any ideas you have about how you plan to expand and make this a really meaningful activity. If you plan on taking one of the 2 graffiti walls that we shared for download, how do you plan to make that a really meaningful experience for your students? So we'd love to hear from you in the chat box, or please feel free to unmute yourself and share if there's a way that you plan on using one of these graffiti walls. Yes, Patricia, I think Dave is going to share the link, but we will also share the link. These are available for purchase, and Dave did just share the link for the graffiti wall ebooks. And if you see us at conferences, if we see you at Beyond School Hours in person or any other conference, we usually do actually raffle off a copy of the graffiti wall walls as well. So sometimes there's an opportunity to win one for free, or you can download them at the link that Dave just shared in the chat box. Charlene shared that there's going to be she's thinking about a parent event where parents can make a magic square and do it like a contest between kids and adults. Awesome idea. So adding a little bit of competition is always fun, and making it an opportunity for adults to have the same kind of fun that their students are having. To have students lead these activities for the adults. So especially if you have students make their own magic squares, teach adults how to do it. And I think it's something fun that's not just fun for young people, it's fun for adults as well. Hopefully you all had fun doing it. It's a great opportunity to give students time to take on leadership and really lead the discussion for their families. If there are any other ideas, please do share them in the chat box. Carol shared that she has a parent meeting this Thursday and she's going to use Magic 34. I'm so excited about that. Awesome. As Dave shared the link for our graffiti walls in the chat box. Oh, and Carol, definitely let us know how it goes. You can tag us on social media to share. I'd love to see that. It's one of my favorite activities, and it's really, really fun to do with kids and adults. So you can go to that link to purchase. Each book costs $10, so they're, I think, a bargain. And they're great resources. So we highlighted the STEM graffiti wall today. So that is filled with activity ideas that are about science, math, really crossing that STEM curriculum. Global Graffiti Wall brings in a lot of concepts about world cultures. It's connected to social studies. And the general graffiti wall is sort of a general, and it has a little bit of everything. There's literacy activities. There's some kind of STEM and literacy activities. It's a little bit of everything. And so all of these are great resources, and that you can go and download them as ebooks, and they're a lot of fun in my view. So if you have any questions about these graffiti walls, please feel free to share them in the chat box. Please feel free to email me. My email address is ylist@foundationsinc.org. If you have any questions about using these graffiti walls, if you want to think about how can I expand this activity to work with different ages. One of the things I mentioned is that the graffiti wall books have a lot of ideas on how to ratchet these up. So how do we make it work with older students? How to scale them down to work with younger students? And I'm always happy to brainstorm with you as well about those. So please, hopefully you take some time to download our graffiti walls if you haven't already. And thank you all for taking the time, an hour out of your afternoon, to be with us this afternoon, today. And to join us for one of my favorite resources that we have. If you wouldn't mind taking just a minute to fill out our feedback form, Dave shared the link in the chat box. This helps us know what to include in future webinars and future training sessions, and how I can improve my skills as a presenter. So I really appreciate if you could just take a moment to fill out that feedback form. It's very short, just a few questions. And hopefully we will see you at other upcoming webinars and in person at Beyond School Hours. I already can't wait. My flight is booked. I'm ready to go. And so I think it's going to be better than ever. But we've really had so many great conferences, and it's always a blast. And hopefully I'll see you there and you can come up to me and say, hey, I met you when you did that webinar. So hopefully we will see you there and have a wonderful time in New Orleans. There's a question from Tia about the recording. This will go onto our organization's YouTube channel, and it will also be available on our website, www.foundationsinc.org. So you can follow up with it in either of those contexts. Probably within a few days to a week, they'll be uploaded to those areas. So thank you all so much for joining us. Please fill out the feedback form, download the 2 tools that we highlighted today if you haven't already, and hopefully we'll see you at our next webinar.
Thank you very much, Yana, for facilitating for us today, and thanks to all of our attendees for joining. As Yana mentioned, please take a moment to complete that brief survey about the session. For those of you who are looking for a certificate of attendance, that's the only way that you can get that certificate, is to fill out that feedback form. After you fill out that form, we'll send a certificate of attendance within about a week or so to all of those who attended the session live. As Yana mentioned, this recording will be up on our YouTube channel, typically within a day or two, as soon as I can get it up. But thank you all for joining. We hope that you'll join us for our next session, which we're going to do in October. We'll have a couple coming to you in October, so keep an eye out on all of our social media channels, our LinkedIn, our website, and so on. And you'll get to see all the great topics that we have planned for October and for the rest of the fall and then into the winter. Thank you all for joining, and we hope you have a great day.